Well, did you also have access to Greg Laurie? Because Greg's still alive, right? So, and he's got to have stories, yeah?
Oh yeah. We patterned the overwhelming majority of the movie off Greg's anecdotes and stories, and his interactions and what he saw of Chuck and Lonnie, because we had close access to Greg, and John and Irwin and Greg Laurie are dear friends, and so I mean I remember sitting with them for I don't know 2 10-hour days I think, and just getting the whole data drop of everything that happened, and so much of their interviews and what Greg ultimately wrote into the book that he did with Ellen Vaughn made it into the film. So definitely Greg's accounts of things and his book and those interviews are the spine of our story for sure.
It's my understanding you guys fought hard to gain access to the real Pirates Cove, basically to recreate the baptisms that happened there for this film. What was that process like, and what was the atmosphere like shooting there?
Well, John says for him, it's the most electric spiritual day of his career. It was really important for us, I think, to go back to that space where it really happened. There was a lot of talk of shooting at different places, and I had been to Pirates Cove multiple times. John's been there more than me, and he and I were pretty adamant that it needed to go back there, and it was expensive. It was very expensive, and
is that because it was tough to shoot? Because I mean, because to do the scenes in the water, you'd have to be concerned about electrical. I think I saw some behind the scenes stuff where you guys had to put stuff on like floats or air mattresses or stuff in order to.
Yeah, the bigger issue was. We had a techno crane that we wanted to bring in. Those things weigh like the weight of like 10 cars, so it's crazy. And then all the gear for the beach had to be hand carried up over rocks. All the extras had to walk up and over these rocks. We had to hire an entire stunt team just to stand around and make sure that nobody fell or tripped. So you have like almost like a fire brigade of guys like saying, hey, walk this way, walk that way, step up this rock. And, guys carrying hundreds of pounds of gear of stuff. In addition to that, the state of California will not let you close any of their beaches. So, to do a film, you really want to be able to close things down. So if you listen really closely, I think we scrubbed most of it out, but I mean, there were children yelling. I mean, right outside of the shots, there's like kids jumping around in their floaties, in the water, and parents just trying to I felt a little bit bad because like they're trying to have like their nice calm time. Film sets are very disruptive and we're very loud and take over everything. And so yeah, we did not, it's incredible to see what we did because we did not have that beach. Like when you talk about having a location, or we did not have that location. We couldn't, if somebody really wanted to be adamant and like stand out in the middle of that, with their floaties, they could have.
So my understanding is that this scene, filming the scene at Pirates Cove, was so ultimately powerful for so many people that there were actually a handful of people who were baptized on film for the sake of being baptized on film, but they actually had a spiritual experience.
That's absolutely true. I've got a funny story about that. Jonathan is a hardcore Catholic, and none of these actors are pastors or any kind of leadership in the church. And so Greg, it was so funny. Greg Laurie last minute took them to evangelical baptism boot camp. Like took them out in the water. He's like, well, here's what you want to do. Just get them to bend their knees, and he like walked them through the whole thing. That some of them might want to hold their nose, so hold them this way. Make sure you don't throw your back out when you pick. It's like all this. He schooled these guys into how to actually baptize someone in the evangelical tradition, which was amazing. They nailed it. If you watch how they're baptizing people like Joel Courtney and Jonathan Roumie, they'd never done anything like that before. So when you see them, it's like an actor, to a smaller degree, but it's like an actor who doesn't ride a horse and then they go to a horse riding school and they just look like a rock star, and they look like a cowboy when they ride because they put the time in. So the baptism looked really good, and they did like learn it from Greg and do really well. But in the midst of all that, we're running takes and sending people out in the water to be baptized. And we yelled cut, and Jonathan came in, his eyes kind of wide. He's like, I don't know if this counts or not, but 5 people in a row just said they really wanted to be baptized. And so I said these words, I said the words that I thought I needed to say, and I baptized them. And Greg's like, yeah, man, you just it's fine. Theologically, you're good. Like, you baptize those people. And so anyway, I mean, Jonathan Roumie was holding evangelical baptisms. And so anyway, it was a pretty amazing story. But it was definitely, there was something in the air. There was something electric in the air on those days for sure.
There are so many other scenes that stand out in my mind as well from the movie. Was there a scene that turned out to be your favorite in the film? Was it the baptism scene, or was it something else?
I think for John, it was. For me, it always was. Even when I discovered this scene in the research, I was crying. I couldn't believe it. I was so overwhelmed. And I remember on this day at the office, I went to John and I said, here's the scene. If we get this right, we could murder all the other scenes and botch everything. But if this scene is right, it's a movie that will work.
Wheelchair scene?
No, it's the scene. It's the scene where Chuck fights to let the hippies in, and he washes the feet of the hippies.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a tearful moment.
Yeah, it's just overwhelmingly powerful because he defeats the tradition of the church with the actions of Jesus. And it's overwhelming, man. It overwhelms me. I've seen it hundreds of times. I tears will fall down my face every time I watch it. It's like, it's what the world needs. And it's like, it's the element of Jesus that I want the young kids to see, that they oftentimes don't see with the loudest voices in the church right now.
So, this film, like I mentioned earlier, is kind of releasing at a rather interesting time in history, and you kind of touched upon it a little bit. And now we've got countless revivals taking place on college campuses across the country. What do you think the movie right now, being released especially right now, has to say to our current cultural movement?
Yeah, I think all of us are feeling a call and a draw back to love. The love of God. And I think I've really been encouraged. I actually read an article. A Nashville woman went to Ashbury and they interviewed her, and she was quick to say that these kids were purposefully disavowing any politics. And they're saying this is about a move of the Holy Spirit. And I think that's the next flex for the faith community. Like, politics is not the answer, guys. The answer is love, And so I really do feel like in Asbury and these other places, I think there's this stripping away of edifice and baggage and facade. And I think it's really like a stripping down of the cultural ramifications of like where the church has gone recently. And when I say that, I don't really mean the church, because I think that can be offensive sometimes. Like, you can have different definitions of the church. The church is the body of Christ, but there's also like an industrialized complex or like a cultural Christianity, and that moves in different ways. So you had Christians back in the day that had slaves, and then you had Christians back in the day that were abolitionists. So they were two completely different cultures. And I always try to grapple with people on that. It's like, don't automatically assume the culture of your day is what Jesus wants, because it may not be. So if this is a return back to the love of Christ and the love of God, I think it's going to mean amazing things for our world, for our planet, for our country. If it's like a rejection of this kind of like over politicized version of Christianity, I think it's really going to help us, honestly. So yes, man, if this is in tandem with that kind of move, I think we're getting ready to head into some beautiful, beautiful territory, man. Like, and I will finish by saying this. The word sanctuary has been such a beautiful word in the lexicon of Christianity. But if you ask kids today who are unchurched and, where would you go if the bottom drops out of your life? Make a list of the 10 places you would go to feel safe. A lot of them would not have the church in the top 10 list. And I want that to change, man. Let's get back to sanctuary. Like, can we have a safe space? Like, it's so beautiful when Chuck's preaching and he just says, you are all welcome here. We just like pan across those beautiful faces, and they're the ones who are excited to be in church. And, they're the ones bringing in all the peace and the love. And so it's more nuance in our film, but the people that Chuck chose to let in, they changed him as much, as his decision to let them in changed the situation. And so I don't know, man. I just think we need a more generous faith and a more loving faith in our world. And when that is happening, and I'm not saying that's not happening, it's happening everywhere. But if there could be more of that, and a cultural shift towards that, I think we could really see some beautiful times ahead.
Now, Brent, before we wrap up, I'd like to give kind of just a quick plug for our local viewership. You guys shot much of the film here in Alabama and in Baldwin County within literally the TV viewing area of my show. And of course, elsewhere. What brought you guys down to Southern Alabama?
That's so cool to hear. I love telling everybody that we shot 85% of our movie in the Mobile, Alabama area. People's minds are blown. They're like, man, that was beautiful. That's incredible. Man, you guys have the most beautiful beaches. I mean, they're mind blowing. I grew up in Texas, and the Gulf is up, man, dude, Texas beaches do not hold a candle like to you guys. So beautiful areas, so the tax incentive system in your state is very robust. It's very strong. And also the beaches are beautiful. You guys have palm trees, and we found some amazing architecture that totally feels like Southern California. So, for instance, I think people would automatically assume that we picked up the high school in LA. We shot our last week in LA. That high school is in Mobile, and it's beautiful. And it looks, my brother's a high school teacher. It looks just like the campus that he works on in Southern California.
Wrapping up, do you have any idea what your next film is going to be yet? What's the next story you want to tell?
I personally don't know what mine is. I'm very excited and hopeful for the future. There's a lot of things swirling around that are very promising and cool, but I will say I'm probably most excited about Andy's movie next, which is the Navy SEAL movie. It's called Fearless, and I think that's going to be a really great film, and there's a lot of energy around it, and so I'm excited to champion Andy and get behind him and be his cheerleader, just like he was for me on this film. And so I'd say, as far as Kingdom Story Company goes, it's going to be Fearless for sure. I don't know, man. I think we got some bright days ahead for the space, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
Brent, thank you so much for joining us.
Man, thank you for these questions. I really enjoyed it. I love the in-depth questions. They're really thought out. And man, this movie, I'm so proud of it and so proud of the team. So thank you for spending some time with me talking about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brent McCorkle.